Welcome to Free4All Friday. We are not going anywhere with the clicker. There we go. Everybody knows about keeping the microphones off and the videos off. And questions of the day. I was out crawling around in there, taking out suckers off the crabapple behind the hellebore and getting the hellebore cleaned up. I think that's the one that you brought over here, Priscilla, called Big Banana or something like that. It's a beautiful hellebore. Whoa, I didn't think I had any blank ones in here, but I appear to have a blank one. Rock cress is blooming. I put the rock cress out by seed and I've got little seedlings coming up here and there. I like rock cress. It's one of the not so often used evergreen subshrubs like candy tuft and creeping phlox. I don't, I think I like it because it's a little looser. If it drapes over rocks, it kind of more forms itself to the rock, whereas the others are stiffer, candy tuft and phlox. You put them over a rock and they kind of jut out like a wiry beard jutting out from somebody's chin. These kind of form themselves right to the edge. But they're in the mustard family with all of those weeds that we hate, like bittercress and tall rocket and the things that are coming up now. Oh, candy tuft, that's right. Greg, are you here? No, Greg. Well, he knows. He sent these pictures. Greg sent the picture of his candy tuft. He says he got it as a piece from Stephen or me 25 years ago or more, and it's been beautiful. And suddenly last year it looked like this. And I said, I've seen that happen before to candy tuft. And I suspected it was club root. I said, get me a picture of the root, dig it out. The whole mustard family, and that would include the rock cress that I was just talking about, and kale and broccoli and cabbage and Brussels sprouts and sweet alyssum and what else is in the mustard family. They're all susceptible to I think it's a bacterial disease called club root that deforms the roots. So these are the roots that Greg dug out and sent us a picture of, and see the kind of thickened, like like it's a club. The ends of the roots are all thickened and gnarly. Um, that's a pretty good sign that you've got it. If you looked up club root, all one word, they would show you the different, for the most part, agricultural plants, because that's a problem with those. But they'll tell you, don't get rid of it. Don't plant anything in the mustard family there for a couple of years, because the bacteria could stay in pieces of root that broke off and stayed in the soil. You have things like that that happen, and you think, oh, why me? But 25 years with a plant performing wonderfully. Shoot, some shrubs and trees don't last that long. Need some help here. Does anybody recognize this plant? It might be Silene, which is a relative of the dianthus, the pinks. Um, I was pruning. Okay, I'll get back to you in just a second, Carol. Um, Gretchen sent this in, and I don't think Gretchen is there. Hey, Greg, showed your pictures of your roots, which really look like club root to me, and you probably came in just after I was talking about it. But yeah, they're almost textbook examples of club root. So don't plant anything in the mustard family there. No no false rock cress, no rock cress, Erebus, no sweet alyssum. Don't put your kale or cabbage or broccoli there. So I'm looking at this, and Gretchen wants to know what is this? She said, I've been letting it come up, but I don't think it ever turns into anything. Um, what do you think it is? And it looks a little bit like Silene, which is called catchfly, and it's related to pinks. It is sold in some wildflower mixes, and it can be kind of pretty for a little while. It has a single uh, leafless stem that comes up from the base and has a tiny little pink flower on it. But it might just be that. But if somebody else recognizes this, I think I got to closer up. This is why we need the full res pictures, because when we want to see close up, we get kind of lost. But see how everything is arranged? There's a cross of leaves on top, like they're nested right in each other. That looks like Silene to me. Silene. Any questions that anybody's got right now? Oh, wait, that's right. Carol had a question. She said, did I hear you say you pruned a crabapple? I was pruning the suckers off of the base of a crabapple. I did prune some water sprouts that I missed in the winter. Well, I just gave up. It had been a long day. And I left one section with some water sprouts sticking up, and I took those off. It was dry yesterday, a nice day to be working. This morning it got a little bit of rain, a little tiny bit. But it was quite dry by afternoon with the wind and the sun. So it could have pruned it then. It's not too late to prune them, but it's right now when you prune, you're stimulating more growth. Every place where I clipped off a water sprout, I'm probably going to get 3 or 4 uh, shoots taking off from there. But I was working on the suckers, the coming from the roots at the base of the plant. They're 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 pretty common on crab apples, especially because of the understock that they're grafted to, but also because of the way that they're planted too deep and the sucker roots begin to grow out of the trunk and the roots develop their own shoots coming up. Um, my only problem with suckers is that I ruin pruners working on them because you want to dig down and cut down further. I'll bring pictures of it next Friday. Cut down further than just cutting the tops off. If you cut the tops off, every year you're going to be cutting more tops off because each top you cut off is going to develop 2 or 3 shoots coming up from it. So you want to go down, and if you can actually find the root that it's coming off of and rip it off the root, you might be able to take the node out that's doing the development of a shoot. But anyway, that's what I was doing, crawling around, taking the water sprouts off the top and then crawling around, taking off the suckers off the bottom. No other questions? It's funny that
Nope, nothing in chat.
cut the sucker off of the actual trunk. Um, the suckers that I was cutting off, the suckers at the base of the tree were coming off of the roots, and the roots are the understock. There were a couple coming off of the trunk way down at the base, but that might have been below the graft. It's kind of hard to tell on an older crabapple exactly where the graft ends. So I was taking them off of the roots. Um,
Yeah, Carol said dig, not did. So did you dig down and get it? And that's
Yeah,
what you.
I dug down and took it off of the root, not the trunk. The trunk was buried on that crabapple when Steve and I moved into this house. They made a raised bed all around it, 8 inches up, and it was exacerbating the suckering. I took all that soil off, so we're down to the flare. Oh,
Gretchen has her
Gretchen,
hand up.
good, Gretchen. Let's hear, because were you on in time to hear that I think that's Silene. It's a pink dianthus relative.
No, I wasn't on early enough, but what I was thinking about was this kind of brownish sort of, oh, what did you say it was?
I think it's a dianthus relative called Silene,
Okay.
Silene.
I got
And
rid of it this week.
yeah, and it sometimes comes out in wildflower mixes and it'll just keep putting itself around in the garden. It's not too terrible a weed.
Yeah, it was, I thought, wait a minute. It hasn't really bloomed or done anything. And it is one of the things that has really long roots.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that made me kind of think, well, I think it's a good idea. I'm trying to take it out
If it
because
doesn't do anything for you visually, aesthetically,
Mhm.
and it's trying to take hold of everything by the short hairs, yeah, probably want to get rid of it.
No, so what did you say the name of it is?
I think it's Silene,
Oh,
S-I-L.
Silene,
Yeah.
Silene.
And it's
Okay.
called catch fly.
Okay, I'll look for it in my weed book. I hadn't found it, but I will look for it. No, the other thing I was thinking about was this kind of brownish areas of grass that I have that I'm pulling out. I don't know if I should be, but have you noticed that this year? That it seems to
There's
be a lot of
big
it.
patches of, yeah, especially in your case, you're in a shaded lot. You've told me how shady it is there, that your moss garden would be your better way to
Yeah.
go. So you probably have patches in there of annual grasses that seeded themselves in and have died back. That's one thing that happens in the shade. There's also what's the one, Steve, they use in the golf courses that we should creeping bent will get
Creeping
in.
bent grass.
Yeah, and if it gets killed back, it's like picking up a bad toupee. You can just kind of lift up big chunks of it. And it
Same
was
as
Go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Steve. You go, Steve.
Well, I was thinking of grubs too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's a
possible.
it seems like a good year for grubs for some reason.
Hmm.
Yeah. It could be, but what you'd want to do is look and see, does the grass just peel right off with no roots? If it does, then dig around a little bit and see if you've got a lot of grubs in there, because the grubs
Well,
would have eaten the roots off, and that's why it dies. So you can literally pull it out of the ground. Um, if it seems to have roots still, but is all brown, it may be an annual grass that died in place. But until you know for sure that it's grubs, I wouldn't worry about the grub situation. We did
yeah,
have we did
yeah,
have a
go
bunch
ahead.
of snow. We did have a bunch of snow mold this year, where after the rain, well, I can't remember now quite what the sequence of events was, but we had snow and then a
Hmm.
melt, and then everything froze, and we had a layer of ice on top of everything, and then snow on top of that. That cut off all the air to the lawn, and the lawn developed snow mold, a fungus problem, and that may have killed weak grass.
I'm not a big lawn person, as you know, but this is a kind of an interesting grass that's got like a lot of, uh, at the top, it's like brushy kind of. So I thought maybe somebody would have seen it. It's like if I look out in my lawn and I did this and I would say like, oh, there's a circle of that
I think
brownish stuff.
I think you're
And
talking about creeping bent or a an annual grass. If you can get a good picture of it, pick up a piece of
okay,
put it on a
yeah.
contrasting piece of paper and send me a picture. But it sounds like what you've got is you've got it's a grass that seeded itself in, or well, seeded itself in and then crept around. But creeping bent does that. So does annual bluegrass, and
Okay.
a
Okay.
couple of the annual fescues do too, that they use for filler and grass seed.
Okay. I've noticed it even in on other people's property. Not people who have good lawns, but more normal lawns
Yeah, more
like
what they call utility turf.
yes.
There's good lawns,
I,
there's there's golf course lawns, and then there's utility turf, which means you mow it and it's green, but it's just kept that way by a combination of all kinds of things growing together.
what
Green mowed long.
Yeah,
green mowed lawn.
or field
It
mowed
works.
short. Field mowed short can qualify as utility
Mhm.
turf too. Shall we get started?
All right.
Okay, so we know about using the chat anytime, and chat to everybody, or raise your hand. Steve's on the watch for hands, and that's either in your reactions menu or it's in your participants menu. But someplace there's a raise your hand, and then you can talk like Gretchen was just doing. Um,
And good evening and welcome to Free for All Friday. This is our 38th get together. All of gardeners are welcome.
because we ask you to come and celebrate growing and cultivate problem solving, which is what we've been working on already as we got started. We're coming to you from gardenaz.org. I'm Janet McConovich,
I'm Stephen Nicola.
and we've been outside today, so we'll tell you about what's going on in our garden, as we've been doing for, well, a little over 30 years in writing, 40 years as professional gardeners. And our website has thousands of our articles on it already. We've put it together to have a place to put articles we'd already written so we could write new ones and not have to write the same things over again. So we've taken things that we've written elsewhere in magazines, newspapers, our books, and put them on the site. There's no advertising, there's no pop-ups, there's no cookies, there's none of that stuff. It's just a place to go and look things up if you want to look them up. And if you don't find an answer there, then you can come on Friday, our Fridays page. You just click the link and you can join us anytime. Tell your friends about it. This is the way that we learned, by talking to others. And we think that it's one of the best ways to learn. The more gardeners that talk to each other, the more varying situations they hear for the same plant in different places, for different places with different plants, for different perspectives on growing. You just learn so much this way. We certainly have, and are glad that you come here and talk with us. So we take your questions and we answer those that we can by email. We've been working on several things with people this week, and we bring some of those here to you now. I do want to record a little bit of a correction to our last webinar. We have webinars on Saturdays once a month, and our webinar was with Pierre Benrup. Steve and I were complaining a little bit about cultivar varieties of native plants that are cultivated, and is there any problem with them? And we said that one of the problems that we find with the cultivars is that they are so heavily marketed that they're planted too heavily. And the example that we used was in the New American Garden in the 70s. That was where the combination of Sedum Autumn Joy, Rudbeckia goldsturm, and black eye and purple coneflower became really popular with maybe feather reedgrass behind them. Everybody planted goldsturm, black-eyed Susan. And by the early 90s, we were seeing septoria leaf spot, black, reddish brown, and then turning black spots on the leaves that eventually killed stems, made the whole plant less vigorous, and the flowers were shorter. And it turned out that goldsturm, a variety of Rudbeckia that had been used by the millions all across the country, was quite susceptible to septoria leaf spot. And now, anytime that somebody brushed against the septoria leaf spot infected Rudbeckia in a parking lot at a mall in Detroit, and then went to Chicago, they were carrying it with them. So they ended up infecting all of these plants, and these plants made it bad for the other Rudbeckias in the garden because they ended up getting septoria leaf spot too. And during our webinar, I said Echinacea, purple coneflower, and septoria leaf spot. The Echinacea, Magnus, was the variety that was overused there. The Echinacea was developing aster yellows and passing that on to everything. The Rudbeckia was one that got septoria leaf spot. So I'm going to keep that little piece to graft in with the video from the webinar the other day. Steve, your picture just showed up for a second there.
What did?
Yeah, you weren't saying anything, but suddenly you became on the screen.
I don't know. Oh, I plugged in my phone. Who knows?
So if anybody has questions, ask them anytime
Nothing,
and start on
nothing so
out.
far.
Otherwise, we just forge ahead into things we've seen this week in our working in the gardens. A lot of people like it to be clean and uncluttered, flip everything down. And I've often been asked, can I just, do I have to cut the old stalks out of the way? Can I just pull them? And I know your question. I know that you would want to do that. It's a lot of stalks to cut, especially if you wait as I do. We're in the perennial garden area now, and I do cut that down normally by the 1st of April. But the 1st of April was not my idea of a fun day to work. So I'm out there now, and now the foliage, the new foliage is coming up, so it's harder to cut. It takes more time to get in there and cut those out. In the major part of our yard, we leave things way late. They're going to be up for another 2 or 3 weeks because we're letting the wildlife use them, and it does become a problem. So the earlier you get out there, the easier it is to just whack everything down. Now you're cutting individually, and can I pull them? On some plants, you can pull them. Give it a try. Tug on the plant. Goat spirit hangs on very tightly to its stems. It's not going to let them go, not without damage. These are stems from Heliopsis, I'm pretty sure. And this one I cut, this one I pulled. And you can see that when in pulling on that plant, you're pulling out part of the new crown because here's the new shoots ready to come up this year. And here, by the way, is a little hole cut in the bottom. One of the reasons for wildlife that we leave things up is that there are some native bees that use the bottom of old stems to put their eggs in the food for the new generation of bees coming out of there in the spring. So anyway, give a tug and see if it comes out. Sometimes you'll find the center comes out very easily because it's gotten old, and that's another indication to you that you should be dividing that plant because the center has just gotten too crowded. But there are things that I've been kind of surprised that they'll come out. Just this year, I've realized that cup plant, one of the prairie plants, it gets to be 10 feet tall. Cup plant, which has a square stem, it's an amazing stem, and it's about as strong as bamboo. I've always cut them and they're a pain to cut. This year I pulled on one and went, I'll be darned, they separate very readily. It's just a matter of what the species does. You can't begin to pull the leaf off of a hellebore. You pull the whole hellebore out of the ground before you pull the leaf off of it. You're going to have to cut those. And this is the my perennial garden. Truthfully, this is the perennial garden over here. This area is ground cover and shrubs is all that's going to be in there. But I did cut it down too because I was trying to get into the center and get the crabapple suckers cleared off. You might be able to see the crabapple suckers. There's a couple of them sticking up here, but for the most part, they were little guys. Whoop, sorry. So a lot of people think that that looks better. It looks even better if you get a uniform color mulch, but there won't be any mulch going on this one. It's got its own mulch on it of the leaves that trapped over the winter and the leaves of things like the brunnera that we're using as a ground cover that laid down. And in the spaces in between, I will weed, take out the bad stuff while we let the good stuff spread itself around and become a solid ground cover. I like,
Michelle was wondering, are there any black-eyed Susans that will grow safely?
yeah, Gold Rush.
Gold brush.
Gold Rush. Goldsturm is a complex hybrid starting with our Rudbeckia fulgida, our rough black-eyed Susan. Nobody knows exactly what the grower did, what he crossed, but it started out with that one. So did Gold Rush. I've forgotten who hybridized it, but it's on the market now and it's a good one. Gold Rush. I like leaving the stems over the winter to keep me in check. It might look like there's room between this columbine and this columbine, but look how far out the stems go, how much room that plant actually took up.
And look at all the seedlings.
Yeah, tons of seedlings,
Yeah.
tons of seedlings. Moving in a little bit on our pine, I'll have to.
Marvin was wondering, are there reasons not to mulch those stems? Not these stems, the ones you pulled and cut, I think.
Oh, no, the only ones that we worry about and we don't mulch maybe would be things that show the plant showed indications of a disease or a hard to root out pest, borers or whatever. But if the plants, and in our case, I saw no real issues last year of disease problems, no mildew problems, no verticillium wilt that can get into your vegetable garden. So they can all be mulched. It's kind of sad that there might be little bees in there. Certainly there were a lot of spiders. The spiders go running. I feel sorry for them. And in the penstemon, just in the penstemon, there was a moth in almost every plant that came out. And I thought, I'm probably disrupting the life cycle of a moth that's goes with prairie plants. Okay.
Uh,
So
Gretchen was wondering, when should we start planting? I have an assortment of Asclepias that came mail order, but I am wondering if I should plant now or wait a bit. I would wait till the soil was 60 degrees
well,
or so.
if your plants that you've gotten are either bare root or they're the same
Oh,
state
yeah.
of development as plants outside. Asclepias, for instance, the orange butterfly weed, that's not even up yet. It's not showing above ground, at least not in our garden. And so if I've gotten a plant in the mail and it's already this far up and got 4 sets of leaves, I would hold it for another couple of weeks, or at least a week, or harden it off, keep putting it outside and taking it during the day and taking it in at night because it's not ready to be out. But these are the leaves of Pulsatilla pasqueflower, and they're still hanging down way down low, keeping the ground warmth all around the plant. If your plant is up higher than that, then don't put it in. If it's bare root, go for it. If it's a division from somebody's garden, go for it. Put it in.
Yeah, that
I
does
moved,
make a difference.
yep, I moved stuff around today. But you can see this is all in our wild area, and I won't be cutting these. This makes a great mulch. That's the
We
straw. The stems from last year just laid themselves down.
you won't see those in 2 weeks.
No, no, you gotta be a little patient this time of year and say, look, even if I just decide to cut the sorry, if I decide to just cut the goat's beard down, maybe take a weed whacker or head shears and just cut it, there might be a couple inches of the last year's stem sticking out. You won't see them in a week. Those plants are growing up so fast right now that they'll cover over that problem. So you can just whack things down rough. I don't like doing it though. I like visiting every plant. I talk to them. I look and see what's going on. I see problems coming ahead of time. While I was working in this particular garden, I was telling Steve, there's an awful lot of digging been going on behind this wall. I'm hoping that the wall is going to hold because the chipmunks and that little red squirrel must have a heck of a den behind one of our
Yeah.
stone walls.
Yeah.
Okay, so no more
Okay.
questions.
Susan was asking, are the webinars recorded so she can actually watch them later in the day? We do record both the webinars and the Free for All Fridays. The Free for All Fridays are all available on YouTube once we get them edited and posted, and they're for free. To watch the webinars, there are a few free ones on YouTube, but most of them are by subscribers. So if you're a subscriber, yes, you'll get the link to where you can click on it and then watch the video.
If you're not a subscriber, just on our website, go to the free webinars page, and you can scroll down through the various webinars and pick one you want to listen to. The Free for All Fridays are listed on the Fridays page, where you can scroll down and get to the ones that you want to get to. I have to apologize to the subscribers who are here right now. If you subscribe to our webinars and you didn't make it to the live webinar last Saturday morning, you expected by Wednesday this week to get a link that says, here's where you can see the recording. It wasn't until last night late that I realized I didn't edit the recording yet. So that's still going to get put up this weekend. The very first time that I read the word volunteer in a garden book many years ago, I didn't have to look up in the glossary what they meant. That's such a perfect word. It's a volunteer plant. It just decided to put itself there. And I have been having fun thinking about volunteers this week. When I built the wall that I was just mentioning, the chipmunks and the red squirrel maybe trying to take down, I stuck, I think, 2 bloodroots in. I said, let's just see if bloodroot likes it. This is going to be mostly shady. And I just love bloodroot. I love the way that the flower is surrounded by the leaf, like protecting it and keeping it warm early in the spring. And I like how the leaf expands and looks like a little bear paw. So I stuck a couple in those rocks, and we now have a couple dozen because they seeded themselves elsewhere in the rocks, and you can't see them from this angle in our picture, but they're seeded all into the border jewel ground cover up here, and they're even seeded out into the open. Some of these plants put themselves in places where they don't belong, and whenever I come across one, I'll look and go, oh, well, what are you doing out here? Should I leave it there? It's a decision. When there's a lot of them, then maybe you don't need them. And I don't feel bad about just treating them like weeds and getting rid of them. But they are plants that ask to be there. There's a lot of seedlings that come up around hellebore, and we're expecting our hellebores in that crabapple garden to become a ground cover. They seed themselves in, so you can see where the seed's going to develop here, and the seed falls all around the edge of the plant. These are last year's seedlings. These are this year's seedlings that have just popped, and these have developed true leaf already. And as they get going, then you get plants that can bloom and give you hybrids between things. So in that case, we've got I think it's something prince, purple prince or whatever. There's a purple hellebore over here, and the yellow hellebore over there. And these guys in between could be almost anything. Now, a lot of the seedlings of hellebore and some other plants, these are going to get killed. I won't have to kill them. The new leaves developing on the hellebore will smother them. It's only the ones that are further out, or the ones that, if this plant gets into trouble and stops having such a dense set of leaves, then some of its babies will take over. It's interesting to figure that kind of stuff. There's the suckers I was digging and taking out. See the little suckers coming up all off of one root. Crabapple. I think it's fun to watch volunteers. I have a lot of Dicentra spectabilis, the old-fashioned bleeding heart volunteers in this garden. I haven't had a garden to take care of that had a lot. None of my clients, none of our former gardens had a lot of Dicentra seedlings, but we do here. And it's fun to look at because we have both the white ones and the pink ones come up. And just like looking at snapdragons as they're growing, from seed in a mix. You can look and see which ones are the red ones. Can you see the reddish tint to the underside of the leaf and the red stems here? This is one of the pink dicentras. See, this one lacks that red. That's one of the white dicentras. It's kind of fun to meet them when they're little and talk to them. They're kind of a wild ground cover back by our witch hazels. And it can be a hassle to sort out volunteers. Let's see, do I keep the penstemon? Do I keep the pulsatilla? Do I let them fight it out with the pearly everlasting that's laying on top of them? What do I do? I tend to develop an eye for the weeds that bother me. I don't like it when the white clover gets into the garden because it can lap over the top of things and kind of pin them down. So I'll watch for that clover leaf and take it out. But they get into these situations. So we've got the golden form of the zebra iris, and the pulsatilla has moved in on it. So has the penstemon. There's a penstemon stalk right here and a basal set of leaves. And we could sort it out, but we designed that area to be a wild area to take care of itself. And the iris, when I threw them in there, were just kind of a last minute notion. So I'm not going to do anything about it. I like
Yep, let them be.
Yeah, volunteers are fun to play with. Now these penstemon coming up in the pussy's toes.
That's got to go.
Yeah, that'll kill the pussy's toes, and we need to have low stuff there right next to the road. So I'll take those out. But boy, that's a nice purple one. Steve will want me to put that someplace because he likes those purples.
And it seemed to hold the purple and didn't get burned during the winter.
Yeah. I'm going to have to finish putting out our bunches of branches and stuff. I've been cutting down shrubs this spring rather than cutting down the garden. We have several dappled willows that every 4 or 5 years I cut them to the ground. I don't want them to become trees. There's no room for them to become trees. And they tend to have a lot more new colorful foliage when they're younger. So I've cut the willows all the way down and cut the lilac with the mite problem down. And we've got a lot of branches right now, a lot of branches. We asked you about our mystery plant that might have been a Linda Lofia. No, it turns out that it is a pulmonaria. It is a Bethlehem sage. It's just one without any spots on the leaves. It might be rubra. I still don't know how it got there or whether it was a volunteer, because throughout the garden, oh, I thought I had a picture of it. Throughout the garden, we've got a number of other pulmonarias here and there, and they drop seedlings and volunteers come up. So it could be a volunteer that showed up. Does anybody recognize this one? We're thinking it's isopyrum, but it's one that we're learning. Can we let this one spread? It was here, and we're playing around with it. It'll go dormant by summertime. If it looks familiar to anybody, let me know. But isopyrum is what we're calling it for right now. Volunteers. Now, does this look like a snowdrop, Steve? The broad
No,
stem?
that's a hepatica. Here's the foliage is in the foreground.
Right. The foliage for the hepatica is here, looking brown. It's,
Yep.
spent the winter up. It's evergreen. And there's the flowers of the hepatica. But this is not hepatica. Is that a snowdrop that seeded
Yeah,
itself?
those were snowdrops that came
Yeah.
earlier.
Seeded right into the hepatica.
Yep.
Who will win there? I usually say that
Hopefully the hepatica, but
evergreen usually wins. Evergreen wins, height wins, wood wins.
Arena has a hand up.
Irina, go ahead.
Hi.
Go ahead. Sorry, I muted you. Try it again.
Okay. I had one question, but since you mentioned willows, I now have two questions. And the question about willow is, I planted some last year that grew roots from the branches in the pot. And now they are growing, they are tiny things, not trees. And you said that you cut them, and that's what I plan to do. Only I don't think it's a good idea to cut them this year because I only planted them last summer. Or can I cut it now and they
You
will
can
still grow?
you can cut them. our rule of thumb is to let them grow to the size, like the height or the width that you want, and then begin cutting. So you can do that. And while you're here, Irina, so Irina's been asking us some design questions, and I can't help a lot yet, but I wanted to tell you about. So this time of year is when I look for focal points in the gardens and also places that need a screen. And before the greenery comes up, look and see how your structure is. And Irina's been asking for some help deciding. She said, I'd like to not look across and always see the neighbors from our deck. And after some back and forth, we're figuring out how to place myself in the garden. This is where I'd be sitting in the sitting area on their deck. And Irina's thinking maybe a hedge here. She can extend the bed or maybe just put them into the lawn because she's got Rosa Sharon. So I'm looking at the Rosa Sharon thinking, well, it's a full sun area with a south exposure. And you got Rosa Sharon that are basically vase shaped. And yes, they grow fast. I've seen Rosa Sharon. How tall is the one at Mom's house, Steve? The one in the way in the back? Maybe,
Oh, it got up to close to 20 feet.
yeah. So they can get bigger than that, but they maintain that same shape. So you'd be looking at that kind of look. And that would probably work because that would be right away and they would grow. Um, they wouldn't be there in the winter, but you don't need them in the winter time. I would not put them individually into the lawn because then you have to trim around the base of them all the time. Um, I trim the lawn. I would extend the bed. But as for can you put anything else in that bed? If you were going to put in a dogwood, you were talking about wanting a dogwood tree, Irina. I would
Yes.
put it in. I would put it in to anchor the hedge, either there or even move it over. Um, so that you're
Where this thing is, I was thinking to put like 7 of those bushes because there's one here in between already growing, and then there's another one to the right of it that the deer ate, but it will it will grow again. So I thought that it would be like 6 of them because I have 6, and then on the very edge, can I put the kusa?
I would put in as many as can fit with room to grow. If you put in too many, you're going to crowd them and they're going to slow down in growth because they're competing with each other too much.
Right.
So I would look at the width of the top and say I need to give them at least as much room as they currently spread to the side. And in terms of volunteers, Rosa Sharon does volunteer a lot. And unless they're special Rosa Sharons, I don't feel any real um, any real sadness for just throwing them out on the compost. So however many will fit in the area, because you want the tops to spread out widely. Um, and Irina also asked about the statue. She likes it's a beautiful statue, this little girl here. Right now, she's acting as a focal point. She's getting your attention, and the attention is going to a see-through metal sculpture, which probably has vines on it during the year. But this time of year, seeing through it's drawing my attention to the neighbor's shed, and I might want to move that sculpture to a place where there's a little bit more chance for it to shine on its own without having a shed sitting on top of it. But when the greenery comes out and you spend your time out there, that might not be an issue at all. And we also tell people we're putting in focal points. So we've got by putting the dogwood here rather than maybe in the middle of the hedge, you create a skyline that goes up, takes your eye up and keeps it up there. She brings it back down again.
I like it.
And we tell people that focal points should be where if I can see one of them, I look at and focus on that and say, if I'm looking at that, how far can I see without turning my head and focus on it? I can see to about here.
I could go to the flamingo.
To the flamingo or the crane or whoever this tall
Yeah.
is right there. And if you've got 2 focal points within one space that you can see all at once, you might be getting too busy. You might be causing too much attention to two different things because they're not focal points are great if they or the plants right around them can repeat something and give you some unity between one area and another. And there's quite a bit of difference between the style of these sculptures over here and her. So these I think work pretty well. They're far enough away we're not seeing them together. But this one right here might need to move so that it's not looking like it's trying to be a bookend with her for something that doesn't exist. I hope that makes um I'm I guess I can be called pretty mired in my thinking in that I do my designs based on a system that starts with what do we want out of the area, um, what will grow well there, make a list, then start sending out focal points and grouping around them. And it's in our book and in our design outlines, the note-taking guides for simple, successful garden design would tell you that. But that's where I start. And one last question that Irina had was about this plant right here. She said, is it a bush or is it a tree? She bought it and it is a dogwood. It's a red twig dogwood and it's a bush. It is a flowering bush. Red twigs do flower if you let them become older wood, but most of us grow them because we like the red. So this is just going to be a shrub, which you can cut down and let grow back as nice red stems. You can see how much red stem grew last year, 2 or 3 feet a year, or you can let it grow as a shrub. Okay. Were there other questions?
Nothing. Oh, Donna mentioned that the isosperm, she thinks she has seen a pink version that is quite invasive.
Yeah, definitely the patch that's in our yard is spreading. The fact that it goes dormant by August makes it something that can be somewhat compatible. We'll need to, there we go. So we'll see. Thank you, though, Donna. It's nice to know somebody else who's grown it. This is not a plant that we picked out. Let's see, let's go back to the way. Anticipating pests. It's not our favorite thing to do, even though we talk a lot about it. But anticipating what's going to happen based on what we've seen happen last year or heard in other people's gardens. We told you about our one dwarf white pine, which flagged us by its color, said, hey, I'm not doing as well as the other guys are. And I, in one of our webinars or a previous Free4All Friday, I showed you that when I got down and took a look at the base and cleaned it off, I think I see borer holes in it. Borers generally attack weakened plants, and this one had slid itself sideways a bit. You're looking at the foam from oil soap that I've put on there. We'll watch it and we'll see what happens with that one. But our attention shifted this week as it got warmer over to the fritillarias. Fritillarias are a lily relative, and last year we had lily leaf beetle eating them. And we talked a lot last year about lily leaf beetle and what to do about it. And we explained that we were monitoring the plants, going by every day and squashing every red lily leaf beetle that we saw so that there wouldn't be much of a new generation laid in the ground around it to come out the next year. Well, we saw the lily leaf beetle last year at about the time that flowers were beginning to develop to open. So we've been watching them. And Steve took these pictures when he went out to look and see if there was any damage. We're not seeing any damage on the leaves here. I said, well, we did do a pretty good job of killing the adults last year. Maybe we don't have much anything of a population. Maybe there weren't any real survivors that are coming up. But in another part of the garden, and Steve is so good at looking that any bit of red draws his attention. This little bit of red here is not a lily leaf beetle. That's a box elder bug. Just happened to be walking through the area. But you can see the leaves are clean. They don't have notches on the edge of them. In another area of the garden where I was cutting down the goat's beard, actually, I looked and saw there's a seedling fritillaria over there, a volunteer. And I said, oh, okay, they're over here. Something's eating this. And we took a look, and there underneath one of the flowers, there were 3 of them needing to be squished. I think I'm going to pull this volunteer out. I'd like to keep my attention for lily leaf beetle in one area. They only eat true lilies, lilium, and fritillaria, as far as we know. Crown imperial is a fritillaria too. So I'd rather keep them all in one place. So that volunteer is probably going to come out. And we're also watching for things like this is the dark color that you see on this flower bud, which may be killing this particular flower on the hellebore, is an indication that there's some botrytis that's spreading on that plant. Whoop. Now these leaves were killed primarily by winter. It's a very exposed area this particular hellebore is in, but weakened leaves can develop these purplish brown spots during the year. And those spots, it's a fungus, can then spread to things like the soft tissue on a flower bud. And eventually they can end up in the crown of the plant. So it's one reason beyond aesthetics to clip the leaves of things and get rid of them. I don't worry about putting those on a compost or in a yard because the fungus, the fungus and bacteria that we get in a garden can be killed in a hot compost. So you send them off to compost at the yard waste center. There, it's going to take care of that fungus. Tanya,
Somebody's asking, can we say a little bit more about the box elder bugs? I'm thinking these are the insects that have swarmed my house in and out in the last 4 months.
yeah, box elder bugs do that. I'll go back and so people can see what we're talking about. There, that's our box elder bug. There's also, did you see him here, Stevie? Oh no, those are flower heads.
Yeah.
Box elder bugs spend the winter as adults waiting to go back over to box elder trees and lay their eggs on the developing flower buds. So female, and they especially like female box elders. During the winter in nature, they would just congregate on the warm bark, warm, rough bark of a tree or on a cliff or something that was facing south or west where it's kind of warmer, and they'd wiggle into little crevices. When there's houses, they'll go to the warm side of a house and wiggle into crevices, and then they end up inside your house unless you're sealed up totally tight. They don't eat anything over the winter. They don't bite. They just become a nuisance. And we're told in all the extension bulletins, if they're getting inside the house, find the place, find the gaps where they're getting in. It's probably on the sunny side of your house, the side that's warm in the fall, where they would congregate, and see if you can find the places where they're getting into the house. You can just vacuum them up. You can knock them down. There's no reason to worry about killing them. The box elders can more than support the box elder bugs. But sorry about that. They do congregate in big bunches when they find a warm place for the winter.
Yep.
Tanya asked, and we've already talked about her 9-bark. She said it's looking bad, and can I cut it down and let it grow? I said it looks a lot like it had a severe mildew problem and branches died back. I just cut the dead out and open it up so that it's got more air movement in it. So Tanya said, I'm still kind of a timid pruner. Can I just cut out? Yeah, just go down to the bottom and cut out the dead. So she's cutting out the dead, and she ends up with this. Now the air is definitely going to move better through that. But I got to looking at it and at her picture of what was left when she cut it out. And I said, there's something that doesn't look right to me about the base of that 9-bark. 9-bark always has peeling bark. That's why it's called 9-bark, 9 layers of bark. So as it gets older, the stem develops that bark. But see how it's pinched in and discolored down here? And see, these are kind of wrapped around each other. And the dead extended all the way to the bottom. It almost looks like there's a physical problem there. So I went out and looked at a 9-bark that I know is okay. This 9-bark was a low branch of one of our clients' 9-barks, laid on the ground and rooted. So I clipped it out, brought it home, and planted it because I like 9-bark. And we had a space for it there where a tree was once upon a time. It spent 2 years as just this stem on the ground growing leaves, and we let it grow leaves. Last year it took off. That's 1 year's growth right there. 1 year's growth, that new wood. So now I can take that branch off. That base is all new, undamaged, uninfected wood. And if you look at it, it doesn't pinch in at the bottom. It doesn't darken at the bottom. And there's some space between individual branches. I suspect that this 9-bark was planted deep in the pot, and you're not looking at the actual base. You're looking at branches that got too wet sitting in a pot and maybe twisted around each other, I think that 9-bark might, if it does not grow really well this year, I would dig it up, get it up out of the ground further and rinse the roots off and see what you've got to work with, or get a new plant. Just letting you know. It's for Tanya. Questions?
Yeah. Judith, are we familiar with Freedom Lawns? I'm very intrigued. If you are, what do you think of them? How would you go about establishing one? Do you know any good providers of seed? I'm not sure. I haven't
I
heard.
I am. I heard Pierre mentioned that when he was talking about alternatives to lawn, but I have not looked into it, so I'm not conversant with Freedom Lawns at all. If they're an alternative to regular lawn, I'd say we can go for it. But I'd also say that if it's a new type of grass mix or situation, there is right now 200, just about 200 years, no, about 150 years of information that's been built up on taking care of, on establishing and taking care of lawn, bluegrass, bentgrass, rye, fescue lawns. Because about the late 1800s, the Golf Club Association in Michigan, in the United States, combined with I've forgotten what is it, the Garden Clubs of America, the women that were proposing that we have lawns in the front of the house instead of dirt yards where goats and chickens were kept. And they went together on the turf industry, the Turf Research Institute, and they came up with all kinds of ways to take care of lawns. So if it's a new lawn, you're probably going to have to do some looking to find out how to take care of it best, and it might be a developing thing over years.
It might be something as simple as what was it, buffalo grass that gets about 6 inches tall and you just mow it once a year or something.
Yeah, yeah,
I
could
don't
be.
know.
We did a buffalo grass lawn for clients years ago.
Yep.
I keep meaning to go by and take a look at how it's a tough grass to grow because it doesn't germinate right away. It needs heat of summer to really take off, and that makes it look different than other things. Cup plant is growing mightily already. I love the big leaves on cup plant. Working on preventing floppers this year. I'm going to cut the cup plant back in July because we discovered last year by accident that we could cut it back in July and it still blooms much shorter. We took a Coosa dogwood out at the Waterford Library last year, and I've been drying the branches of it to use for supports. We'll take them back to the library, but I'll show you here how we're going to use them. I've been drying them out so that I can keep the wood and use it for things like this. I need a strong stake, and it's a nice thick bamboo stake, some zip strips, we call them, or cable ties, something to cut the cable ties with, a hammer to knock it in, and the branch. And I go over and I'm finding, here's the cup plant. We'll pinch that back. But in front of it is a Vernonia, an ironweed. It's one of the tall ironweeds. And I like it tall, and the hummingbirds like it, and the pollinators love it. It doesn't start coming up until late. So I'm identifying where the crown is. I found a couple of the old stems, the base of the stems, and said, okay, here's where the crown is of that Vernonia. And so right at the back of the crown, I'm going to pound the stake in and then strap the branch to it. I don't want to put the branch in the ground. I would lose height because this Vernonia gets to be 7, 8 feet tall. And right now, that's a 5-foot network of twigs for the branches of the Vernonia to grow through and hang on and look kind of normal. And I don't want the branch in the ground also because it would rot if it was in the ground. So I'm just going to strap it to the stake. And I ended up putting another stake into the ground to hold this branch, not holding it up, but it's keeping the tree from twisting on the single stem. And we'll let the Vernonia grow up through that and see how that works. But see, lots of little twiggy branches to hold things up. We got about 6 of those branches from the Coosa dogwood, so I've got 5 to use at the library. Speaking of using things for other uses than in the garden, Greg Beals sent a list of the legacy things that he sees in his garden. I'd forgotten that we asked people to do that, and Greg, we will use those the next time we talk about garden legacy. He said he had this sage plant, salvia plant, for almost 30 years. And then because he was not paying attention to it, it died back. But he loved it and it meant a lot to him. So he took one branch from it, put it on this wood piece, and hung acorns on it and uses it as art in his living room. Kind of cool, isn't it?
Very cool. Yep.
Yeah. There's that box elder bug making his way along further.
Yeah. Nothing new in questions.
Is it too late to cut? It's not too late to cut. People say, oh, it's already started growing. The problem with cutting when something's already started growing is that you get slightly different responses from the plant, more bushiness, for instance. But things like sage and lavender, I'm just getting around to cutting down our sage and lavender. And even if they've sprouted on the branches up here, I'm going to cut them back, way back, further back than we did at the library. I'm always having to go back and cut harder for when people are too timid to cut back. But you can see where there's growth way at the base of the stem. I want to cut way back there and let that growth develop, especially on the Mediterranean herbs like sage and lavender. See that split in the trunk? Split in the bark. This is a woody plant. They're from a Mediterranean climate where it's dry and warm all summer long. We're humid and hot in the summertime, and fungus infects these branches when they're young and causes them to get weaker as they're left in place for 2, 3, 4 years. Better to let new branches grow every year from the stuff at the bottom. But no, it's not too late to cut things back. People tell you to wait till the forsythia blooms to do your roses. Well, okay, get out there. But if you can't get out there this week and it's 3 weeks from now, cut them back. Still cut them back to a nice, good wood. The sweet pea is going to put on quite the show this year. This is
Yeah, it looks like it.
vernal.
It's got a lot of buds on it.
Yeah, vernal sweet pea. It's a nice little sub-shrubby perennial. Boxwoods. Oops. The ES for baby slipped over to the side.
Oop.
Yeah, we've got some questions on boxwood because we talked last year about boxwood tree moth that's been working its way across the continent, and it's in Michigan now, and they're devastating caterpillars. They can have several generations a year, and they just keep coming back and eating, and they'll even strip the bark off the plants. Someone asked whether merit, a systemic insecticide, would work on them. It does. The control measures, and Penn State probably has the best bulletin that I've seen on boxwood tree moth control. Penn State says you really need to use a combination of cultural controls, biological controls, and chemical controls on these things because they have so many generations and we're not sure exactly when the next generation comes out. So you can use BT, that long time known, it's a bacteria that infects caterpillar and caterpillar relatives, the whole Lepidoptera group, caterpillars of moths and butterflies. So I can use BT, and if the caterpillars eat the BT, it causes their stomach to stop working and they starve and die. So that's one thing that you can do early on. You can use a systemic insecticide, which means that it is taken up in the leaves and all parts of the plant become toxic to whatever eats them. But in that case, the bug has to be able to eat some of the plant, not just eat the dust of BT off of the leaf. And so you're going to lose some of the plant. So there'll be some damage for merit to work. And you must continue to apply it because it's going to wear out and new foliage is going to grow that won't have it in there. For the most part, when it comes to insecticides, they're saying watch for when you see the caterpillars and use one of the insecticides that's registered for caterpillars, like the permethrins, which are based on a naturally occurring chemical in plants. So look for those. You can even use soap, but whatever you do, you've got to know that it's going to happen several times, not just once a year. Poor boxwoods. Why are we here? Oh, talking about grubs. We've got so many things that like to eat grubs. Steve noticed this. I noticed this too. I walked by and went, skunk's been out here. See how meticulous they are? Went through the whole area and saved me from doing a count. Okay, notice that they didn't dig out here. It's only in this grass that we keep scalped, Steve, because that's part of our path. It's a little weaker grass and a lot of grubs are in there. But even in there, there's only probably, this is a square foot, it's probably only 3 or 4 grubs per square foot, not enough to actually kill the grass. And although it can look bad, you rake that and it flops over the parts that the skunk peeled up to get the grubs out, and it pushes the debris into the holes. It works out pretty nicely. I just like it when the skunks come and do that for us. And they just reached in there and took it out. But there's also a lot of it's creeping speedwell. A lot of weeds have gotten in because it's gotten thin over there. About the only thing
Yep. And that's probably one of the reasons why it's thin is the grub population that's there.
I think it's mostly thin because we cut it so short and it's shady over there.
I disagree.
But while I was digging in the garden today, I found this is a June beetle, one of those guys that comes and sits on the screen outside. This one, our native beetles, and it's metamorphosing. It's becoming a June beetle. It's not got its hard shell yet, but that's the kind of thing that they're taking out of there: skunks and cranes and starlings. And boy, that is one juicy bit of protein right there for them.
Indeed.
Yeah. Kristen, this is the variegated obedient plant that you rescued for us so that we could get the plant that's not available anymore. It's doing quite well. Look how it's coming up all white. Variegated plants will often sport an all white, and generally that portion will die because there's no chlorophyll in it, so it's not feeding itself or its roots.
So Michelle says that James Wolfen, Twin City Seed Company, is a person she saw one time for alternative lawns for pollinators. And she's put a link in chat of a YouTube that he did. Maybe it would be helpful so somebody look at. Nancy had read her Linaria seed packet, said the plant 1 to 2 weeks before average last frost. Maybe now.
Before, sure, Lenny, I would not feel um, any trepidation about putting any seeds out in the garden right now.
Yeah.
It's not cold enough that they're not going to sprout and die in the cold. They're going to develop as they would develop. So I would go ahead and put them out. Plant your self-sown stuff right now. So Linaria, sure. What's the orange one? Calendula. Our calendula are all sprouted. The nigella is sprouted. I mean, they're paying attention to the temperature themselves and doing what they need to do. The sunflowers have all sprouted already. Got a question about planting in where there are spring bulbs. Somebody says, I want to put in some annuals, but that's where the bulbs were blooming a while ago. What can I do? Do I have to take the bulbs out? No, you don't have to take the bulbs out. You just want to respect the plants that are there. Now, I don't have a situation like that with some little bulbs that I can dig into. We didn't plant any crocuses because the deer like them so much. So I'm going to take some bulbs that need to be divided. This is a very thick clump of daffodils that needs to be divided. So thick that they're pushing themselves up out of the ground. See the white? Those bulbs are probably only 3 inches deep now, and I plant them at 12 inches deep. I plant them a full shovel depth, but they're just lifting themselves up. They're squeezing themselves up. So I can divide the bulbs. And now I'm going to put them in the ground. There's my spade. And I'm going to put them in deep. Ground level is up here. I'm going to bury them. And now while I'm burying them, I'll tell you how we put in plants around bulbs. We use a fork and dig where the bulbs are, knowing that the bulbs are deeper than we're digging. We push the bulb foliage over to one side and put the new plant in. There's plenty of room for small plants. You can even put large plants in, but it's better to plant smaller stuff or bare root stuff. But you can put it in and then add the rest of your soil, and the bulb will be fine. You can bury them deeper. You can also just push the foliage over to the side. Most of the very early spring bulbs, in a matter of 2 weeks, their leaves are going to start yellowing out and they will have fed the bulb for the year. On things like daffodils, you could cut the leaves short if you don't mind if they don't multiply quite so quickly. And I don't mind. I think once I put in 2 bulbs, that's enough. I don't need to have them turned into 20 bulbs. Hope that makes sense. But you can just dig with a fork so that you don't actually cut the leaves, and then push the leaves to the side of the hole that you've made and put your new plant in. They'll grow there fine together.
Arena wants to know, is now a good time to fertilize roses?
Roses like a lot of nitrogen, and almost any time you can fertilize with them. If you're fertilizing with a slow release formula, you're probably better off than right now using a water soluble, because it can drain through the soil too quickly and the roses aren't in heavy growth yet. But any of the slow release fertilizers are fine to use now. The Milorganites, the holly tones, the garden tones, the um, turkey manure, poultry manure, those things are all worth using.
Marilyn has quite a design question here. Last fall, she prepped a 31 by 8 foot easement for a combo pollinator xeriscape garden. Been working on a potential plant list. Plants have to be 3 feet or less, and I'm struggling with a focal point plant, which will be near one of my new little trees. I also want it asymmetrical. Any thoughts? I also would like a small tree nearer to my house, about 10 to 15 feet from the driveway. I'm thinking a serviceberry standard. Do they sucker? I have a horror of suckering trees after having 2 sergeant crabs. Thanks for any suggestions. The garden is in full sun. The trees are very young.
Yeah, this is
That's a
Marilyn.
whole
This is
half an
Marilyn. I
hour
remember.
answer question.
Yep, I remember her, Sergeant Crab. The 31 by 8 area that you're doing, it sounds like it's, when you say it's the easement, that's also called the parking strip or the outlawn or the
L
health strip.
strip.
Yep. Um, and if you're looking for plants that go there, then you're looking for things like we have at the edge of the road. You're looking for creeping thymes and border jewel and pussy's toes and things that can weave in among each other and take a little bit of a hit when people get out of their car out there. Um, so I would, you could do just the sedums. You could just do a selection of sedums. And for a focal point plant, you really can't beat something like a yucca. It gives you a little bit of height, maybe color guard yucca that has a stripe up the leaf, and that stripe turns pink in the wintertime. They can be really nice to look at. Or something else that rises just a little bit higher than the low sedums and thymes and pussy's toes. Just a little bit higher would be candy tuft. I want a little bit higher than that. All
Yep.
you need is something that bright. One of the short grasses, one of the blue oat grass, for instance, very good drought tolerant clump forming blue oat grass. And you could just use a clump of blue oat grass or 31 by 8. You might want to put 3 of them there and work your way around it, so that just use height as your focal point. Serviceberry will sucker, and crab apples sucker worse when they're planted too deep.
When they're planted bad,
Yeah, you just got to watch for that.
gotta plant them right. Plant your trees right. And 10 feet from a driveway for a serviceberry in the future is a little close, in my opinion.
Ours is probably, we have one at the house we've inherited, and I like
Yeah.
serviceberry, so we left it there. It's probably planted only 6 feet from the driveway, and the roots are under the driveway and causing some issues. But there are smaller serviceberries,
Yep.
and the single trunk ones are harder to find, but I think are very elegant looking trees, and much less likely to sucker than the ones that are crammed into the pot with making a multi-stem tree out of a bunch of individual things put in.
About 2 minutes.
Okay, since weeding is never done, we're going to repeat some of the things that we showed on Saturday, because some of the people here were not in our webinar subscription list. This is the time of year to know your weeds, to know who it is you're dealing with. This is the root, and this is actually the root that you should be looking for, that grows horizontally and sends up these shoots that become these little, some people say little pine trees or whatever. But people will pull this scouring rush or field horsetail they'll pull it and figure that they got the root when they get this part. But what you need is this part that runs horizontally. This is a native plant. Yes, it's a weed, but it's a native plant that has the advantage over many other plants in that it can grow in low oxygen situations. So if there is a compacted layer, and there was in the client's yard where I'm working right here, a compacted layer one shovel down, in this case from the old farm field time, this root is running along that level that's compacted where water accumulates and other roots can't grow. You need to get the running root out on field, on scouring rush. And please notice that this is somebody put landscape fabric there, which I am laboriously taking out because it doesn't stop weeds. These guys grew right through it.
They're a waste of time and a waste of money.
Yep. And they're a pollution thing because people leave them in
Yep.
we just think it's amazing that weeds choose their places, it seems like, or it's just a combination of errors. Can you see them in there? They
This
choose
isn't all scouring rush. There's one
Yeah.
over
See them?
by the gutter. Yep. Three,
They,
four.
they just pick their place, and if we don't notice them, that's where they become established. If you've got this kind of situation where you've got a weed with a running root running in a plant with a running root and it looks the same, I would be taking up the coreopsis. That's a threadleaf coreopsis. I would take up the coreopsis, clean out the roots, put some coreopsis in a holding garden or a new area someplace else, and grow something that does not look like scouring rush in this area while I continue to get the rest of the
Big
scout.
leaves, big leaves.
Yeah. That's coming right through the fabric. Right through. I do like weeds that I can just kind of loosen the soil under them with a fork,
And
lamium,
pop.
nettles, and just pop them out. And I was driving Steve a little crazy today. We were on our way from one place to another in the garden, and I kept stopping and pulling up lamium because it is a cool weather plant, and they're really coming out all over the place. He took this picture of a pasque flower, Pulsatilla vulgaris, to show me that they were blooming. But what I saw was the background. I said, "Oh my gosh, the bittercress is blooming." I went out and pulled them. I missed a few though. See them?
Yeah, it's not hard to do.
Yeah.
We've got a hand up from Margie Hopkins,
Hey, Margie.
and then it's after 8.
Okay, so we'll be getting going here. I think that's the end of our, yeah, that's where we're done. Go ahead, Margie. You can ask your question and we'll entertain if there are other questions that come up. You can stay with us, folks, or you can join us for the next Free for All Friday, which would be next week. Next week, Friday, what would that be? The 25th? 25th?
25th.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Anybody? Margie?
Waiting for Margie to turn her microphone, open her microphone up.
There.
Okay, there. Okay, so I'm digging out the curly dock because it's a weed, right?
Curly dock is one of the weeds. Yes, it's a tall.
Okay, it's look coming up beautifully. Okay, the bishop weeds I'm digging out. Hi, Deb Hall, she's here. The compost is at the right here in Royal Oak. They have like mountains of it. It looks beautiful at the 13 mile in Coolidge. I mean, if you need compost.
That's coming from a very good compost maker.
Yeah. So can I go get some of that and just lay a thin layer around? Because at the Waterford Library, did we put garden soil there? What was that?
We put a mixture of compost and topsoil. So they sift the topsoil and they mix it with compost. We put a mix. You can use compost as a mulch if you'd like. The problem with using it as a mulch is that it holds moisture pretty well. So once it becomes wet on the surface, weed seeds blow in, tend to be able to germinate right there. So it doesn't keep your weeds down as well, but it sure looks nice.
It looks nice. Okay, so I could do that because I'm in the shade and in the wetness. It's just I'm getting really nice moss growing all over the place. I love moss. Okay, we went to the zoo today. It was beautiful. A lot of things coming up. And you said to cut the roses. Okay, I think that's it.
Okay.
Oh no. My main issue right now with my HOA, my poor babe, my poor house, is the red pine that's growing by the swimming pool in the corner. outside the gate of the swimming pool, and it's our shade for us blonde people who can't be in the sun.
Yeah.
And they want to cut that beautiful red pine down. And I talked to Deb, and Deb sent me things like issues, like how wonderful they are. And I'm talking to people around here, like, how do we save this tree? Because the HOA just wants to cut the thing down because they think that the little needles are going into the pool, which they're not, I don't think, because it's on the other side of the fence.
They may be. They may be, and somebody who services
If a lot of needles get stuck in a pool filter, I could understand
That's what Deb
wanting to
said.
try and control it.
That's
Yeah.
what Deb said, but I
Yeah,
don't think there's that much. I think they just hate me.
I think you'd have to ask for a vote. Homeowners
Yeah.
associations it's hard enough with a committee of two, with a husband and wife gardener, to agree on what's going to happen out in the yard. When you put a whole bunch of people together.
Yeah, but I'm kind of going around to the owners, and we're all talking about it, and maybe we could save this tree. But that's my big sadness right now, is cutting down this beautiful red pine tree that gives shade for us pale skin people to sit by the pool in the summer. And they just want to cut it down. And I'm like, what do you...
Losing a tree is always a sad thing. Yes, it is.
I know. And there's nothing I could do, right? Like, it's an HOA. Just let it go.
Yeah.
But like you said,
Yeah, don't stress over it. You're stressing over it. Stress causes problems. Don't.
Okay.
Not worth it.
Okay, thank you.
In my opinion.
I agree. Okay, that's what Deb said too. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Love you guys. Thank you for everything. Bye.
Arena has one more question too.
Go ahead, Arena.
So I just moved Japanese beauty berry bush, and of course it's dormant because it comes up later, right? Should I trim it all the way, or should I leave those last year stems for now while it is established?
We cut beauty berry all the way back because we like the straight stems to come up, and we like it to stay at roughly 4 feet tall and 5, 6 feet across. So we cut it all the way down to the ground. I haven't cut mine yet, but I looked at it today and said I better get in there. But you can leave it. It's just going to take up more room, and if you don't cut it back, the shoots that came up and flowered last year are going to get side branches, and it makes it wider. If it is if it's the beauty berry that's sold at most garden centers, it's one of the hybrids of a Japanese Asian species. Our native one goes upright. But if yours is the branches are growing out like this from center crown, it's probably one of the Asian hybrids, and they get wider because the branches that they develop weigh them down a little bit, so they just come outward even more.
So it's okay to cut it even though I just moved it.
Right. Yes, it's okay to cut it even though you just moved it. Yep.
So I just wanted to say to Margaret, our neighbors just cut 3 62-year-old pines and 1 fir tree because they think that trees are messy and they want a plastic fence, and the trees were in the way.
Of course.
It is a very sad thing. You just can't replace a tree.
That's for me today is quite a day.
Yeah. We have neighbors that I think are looking at us wondering, when are you going to take those trees down?
Not for a while.
Not until we grow replacements. So we're working.
Well, these pines were gorgeous, healthy, huge pines. Just
see, Margie, it doesn't even have to be a homeowners association; it just happens to be the adjacent property.
And we went to the city, and we tried to talk to them, and nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing helped.
Yeah.
Just so sad.
Yeah, I am sorry that's happened. But you can plant some more things now.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
It was very nice to talk with you today, everybody.
Thank you all for being here.
We're gonna call it.
Janet?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay, Janet, you're going to be at Vegans a week from Saturday.
Yes, Steve and I are both going to be at Ray Wiggins Nursery next Saturday.
Would you like another voodoo bulb? Then I will bring it. I have one big one yet.
Well, I don't want to take your big one away when you had only little one, when you had
No,
little.
no. That'll be fine if you want to bother with it. And
Sure,
if you
I'll swap you for some floating row cover to put over your amaryllis so that the narcissus bulbfly won't get into it.
Now I have another question. Do you still have the papers what to do with it? Otherwise, I make you some new.
I do. I scan them in and text them because they're so well written instructions for how to grow a voodoo lily.
Okay, then
If anybody wants them, I'll share them. What Sonia shared with me. Very, very precise instructions with drawings and everything.
I'll take the bulb to Vegans.
Okay, and I will see you at weekends. And thank you for asking about that because anybody else who wants to come out, I think we're just talking about simplifying the garden, but I can't remember for sure. I'm sure
Yep.
Weekends has it on their program. Okay.
Okay. Have a happy Easter.
Yeah, so we'll see you next Friday, April 25th.
Take care, everybody. Ta ta for now.